Very good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 13th edition of Goa Art and Literature Festival. My name is Heta Pandit. I'm a writer and part of the Goa Writers in Goa, and I'm welcoming you on behalf of GALF and the International Center Goa, ICG. Yes? So we have with us today, we're very fortunate to have two brilliant writers, researchers, and absolutely sensitive, beautiful human beings. So let me introduce to you Aditi Mehta, who's done this absolutely amazing series, 3 parts, on the Bhils of Mewar. And this reminds me of my childhood actually, because I used to go with my dad to the Bhils, visit the Bhils in the Dangs in Gujarat. So this brings back memories. But just going by your cover, Aditi, it's absolutely stunning. They say you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but I say do judge a book by its cover. And in conversation, we have Enakshi Ganguly, who lives in Goa now, in Miramar. She's also a brilliant writer, an award-winning author, and a human rights and child rights exponent. So I will hand it over to them. A little bit about Goa writers. We are a motley bunch, loosely put together, about 50, 60 of us. We started in 2004, and Goa Writers was started by Victor Rangel Ribeiro, who now lives in the US. Okay? And GALF, as I think this is the 13th edition. Okay, so welcome to our speakers and welcome to all of you.
So, thank you, Hetal. My name is Enakshi, as she says, and I'm totally and extremely privileged to have with Aditi Mehta on her amazing 3-volume work titled "Playing with the Goddess Gavri of the Mewar Bhils." So I just wanted to sort of begin with a little story. I had heard of Aditi, and she's very well known, but I'd never met her. And her husband, who is Mr. Aditi Mehta, and I have been in the sector for a very, very long time. I've even shared a panel with her sister, who's Jyoti Ghosh, and the economist, and everybody would tell me about Aditi, and thanks to Goa, I meet Aditi here, and then she gives me the privilege of having this conversation with her, which is even better. So, and it is serendipity almost that GALF has brought us together for discussing her 35-year-old journey that has led to these books. So Aditi, I'll just read out a little bit about you. Aditi Ghosh Mehta is a retired 1979 batch Indian Administrative Service officer from Rajasthan Cadre. This book has been in the making since her first posting in 1981 as a subdivisional officer and magistrate in Udaipur district, the same year that her first child was born. And it would not be wrong to say that these books have been an integral part of her life for over 3 decades waiting to be born. You've had a very long pregnancy, Aditi. She walked into my house a few weeks ago with these really heavy books, and I was completely bowled over by the sheer weight of the books because she could barely walk. And then she said, I only have one copy, will you look at it? So I started looking at it, and in Bangla we say, ulot palot kore dekhlam. Like I just turned it right around here like in this. And frankly, Aditi, I was completely hooked because the storyteller me and the sociologist in me just got completely hooked to her books. And then when she asked me to do this conversation, I decided that I'll have to prepare. So I sat down to read, and I said, I'm very good. I do very fast reading. But I couldn't do fast reading because I had to keep going back and forth because there was so much to learn. And it's not that I don't know the Bhils. I've worked with the Bhils in the Narmada Valley, and I've worked with them in Gujarat, but I had no idea of the Bhils of the Mewar district, especially of Rajasthan. So, Playing with the Goddess is a 3-volume cultural memoir cum ethnographic work that showcases the rituals, the theatrical performance, and the performative content of Gavri. We've been told we have 50 minutes. The first 10 to 12 minutes we'll have a conversation, and then Aditi will make a presentation. So, can I begin, Aditi? You say, and I quote, Gavri is the seed myth or the signature cosmological tale of the Bhils of Mewar. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is Gavri?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Enakshi, and thank you very much, Heta, for this introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here and very happy to see so many students also, and of course, some good friends. Thank you for being here this morning. I wanted to just say it is certainly the seed myth, and I think every civilization has certain pervasive seeds. You can call them seed myths, you can call them seed entities, but this and this is an interpretive work, I would venture is a seed myth. You know, it is widely known that Shiv was a tribal god, and the Bhils of Mewar, unlike the other tribals, the Bhils of Mewar particularly say that we are ancestors and direct ancestors of Shiv and Parvati. And in dancing the Gavri, they are actually dancing to themselves. And I remember watching it initially and just superficially because I didn't know the language, I didn't know the context and so on, but being completely riveted just by the sheer exuberance and the color and the virility of just the dances which are undertaken all day long. So this is really a kind of original Shiv Parvati Mahima. Gavri is their goddess whom they actually call into being, and Gavri is a polyvalent term. It means the dance form. It also is the goddess. And they pray to the goddess through their dance for 40 days continuously during the rains, traveling from village to village to village. So this is just by way of a small introduction.
So, as you begin the book, you talk about how in 1981, Nandiji, your office peon, disappeared, and the others sort of nonchalantly informed you that he's got to perform the khel. And you were really irritated. But something happened in 1984, which I have been calling the Jeep moment. Because you were traveling in the Jeep, and then you just stopped the Jeep and you jumped off the Jeep because you couldn't, and from then you couldn't stop. So can you just walk us through this journey that you've been through?
Yes.
With the Gavris.
It's interesting that, and I did put it down, but I had a very small office, and one of the people, 6 or 7 staff as an SDO, and one of them who was a peon come office boy come many other things would just keep disappearing, and everyone was fine with it. And I was really very, I'm a government servant's daughter also, and I was really taken aback that how callous. And, on government time, no wonder government has such a bad reputation for sloth and laziness and so on. But nobody was at all perturbed. I also forgot about it because, as Enakshi said, I had my daughter, life was very hectic. Then the Jeep moment, indeed, we were in the car, in the Jeep, and I saw this happen. And I got off the Jeep, and I was watching them. And of course, you're bundled away. We have to go, we were traveling somewhere. So we went, we did our work there. And when I traveled back, it was almost 6 hours afterwards, they were still dancing. And that was unbelievable because obviously it meant something to them. It was just not a khel, it was not just a simple dance or a tamasha. And that really whetted my curiosity. I was very, very intrigued and wondered what it was about. I spoke to one of them. Of course, it was through many interlocutors because I didn't understand Mewari then. And they said they're dancing for Devi. They're dancing for the happiness of all the people. It seemed all a bit nebulous to me, but nonetheless, I saw it, and something obviously grabbed me, and that's how the journey really started. And it took 35 long years for it to really fructify, germinate and fructify.
There's this tragic moment, and I read that in your book. I was like brokenhearted. You lost an entire trunk load of everything: your references, your photographs, your interviews. How do you cope with that? And how did you even rise from there to finally to put down these 3 volumes?
So this was about 20 years down the lane, and I would, whenever I had a chance, I would interview, I would see, I would observe, I would take photographs, whatever, however good or bad they were. But I was constantly adding to them, and because we are in a transferable job, I had this repository. I had a steel trunk where I would put everything, labeled and so on. And then I was posted in Delhi. I had come back to check once on a leave, on a 1-month leave, and I opened my trunk and I was horrified that it was virtually empty with 1 or 2 things in it, and I just couldn't believe it, because I had collected this over years. Everyone knew what it was about. Everyone knew how invested everyone was, because it was full of interviews, photographs, but nobody else seemed to know anything about it in the house. And I was actually completely heartbroken. I just could not bear the thought of Gavri, or even think about anything to do with the book or the art form after that for many, many years. And I was in constant dread of, meeting some of the people who I had interviewed just randomly in the bazaar or in someone's home. And I was really constantly, my face would darken when anybody would ask me, well, what's happened to that project? So after a long while, I joined a friend of mine at the IGNCA told me that no, you have enough. And she reminded me of M.N. Srinivas, the famous sociologist. And he lost all of his records. They were burnt down. And he really recreated his book out of memory. And so he told me that if a sociologist can write about a complicated institution like a South Indian village, then you can certainly write about the Gavri from memory. And that gave me a bit of heart, though of course it's not memory. I, of course, interviewed again and I wrote it all down again, but that's how I restarted.
As a researcher, I would have been depressed beyond words.
Yes.
Today I'm wearing, by the way, real jewelry in honor of the book.
And this is a
because I've dug it out of my trunk from many, many years ago. And this is important because the Gavri is all about reproduction. It's about marriage. It is about love. And yet, there's no role for women in the performance. And so it is kind of, are they just spectators? Do they get involved in any other way, or they just sit there and watch men become them?
Yeah, it's a very good question you ask, because as I saw it, actually the entire holding environment for the Gavri is women. This entire dance form is done in honor of women. It is only done because there are women from their village who have been married to other villages. So the men only go dancing into those villages. And in doing so, they have created actually cross-caste, cross-class relationships. A whole web of social relationships have been created by the Adivasis of Mewar, wherein which all the upper castes are beholden to them to do a ritual that they all want, but will only be done by them. And Bhil men do it, and they do it actually in honor of the Devi. So all the women are treated as universal Devi, and the women have a role in which the last 10 days they do go to the temple, and the last 10 days of play are also devoted to them and to the Jowara, the sprouted seeds, which are given in offering to Gorkhya. Gorkhya has no fixed temple. She is willed into existence and she's carried around. She's never at home. unlike any of the other goddesses. She goes traveling from village to village to village, where women of that village have been married. So it's a very interesting conception, because the Bhils have actually, I would say, politicized walking way before Gandhi. So this is how they actually do it, in terms of mobilizing their entire community, going to another village, and that itself is a huge assertion, cultural assertion, social assertion, also a political statement.
So it was interesting because really, I mean, having worked with the Bhils myself and also reading your book, we do know that Bhils have been, and like all tribals, have been put at the bottom of the pile.
Absolutely.
Bottom of the caste system. And the British did nothing to help that, by stigmatizing them in many ways, which you've written in great detail about. And yet, they have, through the Gavri, developed such a strong negotiating position in society, vis-a-vis the Rajputs, as you just sort of, in a way, you actually alluded to it just now. Do you think that a Gavri is actually a vehicle for social change? Because the change maker in me kind of really got tickled. I said, can this be a vehicle for social change? Can it be a vehicle for breaking down the caste system in a long-term way, or is it only for that period of time?
Yes, it's again a very, very deep question, and it is actually answerable also at two levels. But I will have to say that through successive iterations of this festival and repetitions every year of this, you definitely see there is a dramatic change and improvement in the status of Bhils. As you yourself say, a few generations ago they were considered untouchable, and they were not allowed to enter certain parts of upper caste homes. That you don't have. You actually have Brahmins, you have Rajputs, touch their feet, and they seek their blessings during this period. Now, in normal life, during this period, they are actually considered to be gods. Once there is an actual symbolic moment of what is called transference, where the average Bhil becomes one of the gods. And I have a chapter on it. It is called the embodied repertoire of the Khelia, of the dancer. But I would like to say that it is a case unlike the Dalits, for instance, and we have not had a strong social justice movement in Rajasthan as in Tamil Nadu or as in Karnataka. But unlike the Dalits, here the Bhils of Mewar certainly occupy a higher position. And if you do remember history, the Bhils were actually the rulers of Kota, Udaipur, Chittor, Banswara, many of the major states of Rajasthan. And even the shield of the House of Mewar has Maharana Pratap or some Rajput king standing alongside a Bhil. So they are actually seen to be two parts of one whole.
Yesterday when at the inauguration, there was a conversation about preparation, silence. She was talking, Mrs. Gokhale was talking about silence and the preparation that they do for the dance, and how the Swiss never understood it. It brought back Aditi to me, because the Khayalas, the people who perform the Gavri for 40 days live in complete like monks. They don't eat certain foods. They really prepare their body to become the female deity, right? It's such an immersive process. How do they get out of it? Because then they become normal people again.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Even at the mundane level, you find them, they don't wear footwear during those 40 days because they feel that the entire earth has become Jagrit. And to step on the earth with footwear would be to defile the earth. So they say that for many months afterwards, we even forget to wear chappals when we go to work. And for many months afterwards, we really forget that we are just normal people. We are no longer, hum log dev nahi hai. So it is actually not just self-belief, but entire community that has actually allowed this kind of self-propulsion and belief system. And there is a collective catharsis that, I would like to also argue that also allows this, and, we'll see in some of the slides that we have. Yeah.
And finally, I know that this is 3 decades of your work, more than 3 decades of your work, or as old as your older daughter, if not more. You've completely embraced the Bhil way of life, the Gavri. It's become so much a part of your life, and yet there is this huge debate now about I and the voice. You're a Savarna, Bengali, upper caste, upper class, educated, and yet you've immersed yourself in the Bhils. And so this whole debate around I and the voice. So I want to ask you, because did you at any point feel, or did anyone suggest even that you were appropriating space?
Yeah, again, that's an interesting question. This Russian author, Anna Akhmatova, when she was writing the Requiem, she was standing outside the Leningrad jail, waiting with other women like her, other mothers, waiting for permission to see her son. And they would stand day after day after day. And one day, one of the other women recognized her and turned around to her and said, "You must write of this." And she looked at this other woman and without thinking said, "Yes, I must." And, did she say "I must" because she knew she was an authoress, that she could write, or that she had any special insight? And I think it was just a compulsion that I think each one of us has to decide at some stage what offering we want to make. And since I saw this, and I was surprised, there really isn't anything written about this community of this kind of, at this level, that somebody must tell their story. Somebody must tell the world who they are and must tell the world what they think. And I really didn't think I was competent or incompetent, or I thought I just was. And so I thought I would do it, and I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aditi. At this point, I think I'm going to leave you to make your own presentation.
Thank you so much. But I must say, it was wonderful. Your questions, they really made me think. So I just want to set the context. This is just one. It's a kale called Narsing, but just to show you a little bit of what you're going to see. So now, who are the Bhils? The Bhils are the second biggest tribe in our country after the Gonds and the Santals. And they are the largest tribal group in Rajasthan. They're about 41 lakhs. The last census was, of course, 2011. After that, we've not had a census. But there is a significant decline in their population, I want to say, due to poverty, due to illness, or whatever. The Gavri is only danced by Bhils in Mewar, which is the 4 districts of Udaipur, Bhilwara, Rajsamand, and Chittorgarh. So now, some historians argue that they were the original inhabitants, Adivasi, and that they were pushed out into the hinterlands by outside invaders, outside settlers, and so on. Then the British also came and parceled some of their forests, their lands, and pushed them further on into the mountains and wastelands. And so this pincer movement really did cause a significant impoverishment in Bhil status. From being the rulers of large habitations, they really became subjected to poverty, illness, disease, exploitation. So Gavri, as I said, is a dance drama, and it is a 40-day carnival of play and dance, and it manages to transcend caste and class boundaries, because you will find upper caste and upper class people actually praying in their temple that the goddess come, that the goddess should allow herself to come and be part of their community. So the dance play is called a khel. The dancers are called khelias. And when they have decided to do the Gavri, every single tribal male in the village must dance. There's a kind of societal whip, a tribal whip, and every single Bhil household must contribute or must participate with one Khelia dancer. And the khels are never performed independently of the ritual. Like you have tamasha, like you have Ramayan excerpts. But in the Gavri, it is only once the Gavri is taken and the rituals are undertaken that you have the performance. These are some of the rituals that I've just laid out. So Enakshi was talking about the almost monastic kind of life the Khelias must undertake to lead for the next 40 days. And you will see no footwear, no alcohol, no non-vegetarian, no green vegetables, no...
I was very surprised with this one. What do you mean by no green vegetables?
Nothing that grows above the ground, because the ground is sanctified. So they don't want to eat anything that is a fruit of the earth. Of course, they eat dried, they eat besan, they eat dal, they eat things like that. But otherwise, a very restrictive food restriction indeed. And this is also subject to the debate. In the last slide, you'll get to know. And no cutting of nails or of hair, no changing of clothes. Can you imagine? No bathing for 40 days except the one day, which is the bathing day of the gods, Dev Chulni Gyaras. And that's the day they're allowed to bathe, and they have a ritual bath. And what is interesting is caste Hindus and other castes also observe these disciplines, especially the food disciplines of the village that's taking the Gavri. So this is the official start of the 40-day ritual, when you tie a rakhi over the khanda. This is Gaba Perna. This is interesting, inside the temple. And this is the Rai Buriya donning his ceremonial costume. This is, I would call, the first moment of transference, when actually once you wear the robe or the jagga of the deity that you're going to basically represent, you become that deity. This is the head of the Shivji, the Buriya, again being carried in procession. And this is Buriya being received by village women when he comes. This is the final touch. There are two women rise. This is Mohini and Parvati. Now, they cover the mouth and the face because otherwise the beard would show. So invariably you will see their faces covered. This is the sprouted jawara. This is also interesting. Khelias have one meal a day. It's a communal meal. And again, restricted foods are not given. This is all a communal participatory meal contributed by the villagers. This is every day there is an evening arati at the village temple. This is the clay elephant made by, again, a notified kumhar, a potter, who was specifically named to be the potter for the Gavri. And this is all of them praying before the temple, before the clay idol. This is Parvati again being taken in procession before the immersion, the last final days. Now I'd like to talk about the khels. What does one actually see when one goes to a Gavri site? So one sees this kind of riot of play within this whole experience. And these rituals, while as the rituals have a strict order, even the plays you will find have an order after which is followed. So there is a very, kind of Rabelaisian, carnivalesque atmosphere where there's parody, there's sarcasm, there's making fun of the powerful people, and so on. There are about 40 khels, 40 plays. The largest is the creation myth. It's called Upatnipat. It's about almost 180 or 200 pages long. And they talk about basically Devi's experiences in the world. And it's a very down-to-earth Devi. She uses her wiles. She has a really motley crew of sevaks. She uses whatever she can to get her way in the world. There are practical insights on life. There are parodies of those in power. So Gorkhya Mata is willed into existence. And you know, an ordinary stick, in some villages it's a piece of wood, in some villages it's a piece of stone. So that is used to represent Gorkhya. And Gorkhya is the only known goddess whose chadava, whose offering is fun and laughter. Her gift to her, she wants that you just have a good time. You have to lead a straight life, not overly ambitious or austere, but to laugh and to love. So my second volume is called Stories of Love and Laughter. And she travels to different villages daily, unlike the Hindu goddesses who stay in one place and wait for the devotees to come to her. So the khels, again, I don't know why this is the same photograph twice, sorry. So the khels start with the Jagaran, where all castes assemble, and then they start with this 40-day ritual. I've gone through all of these. So there is humor. Socially marginalized Bhils become really the dancing gods, and they confer blessings upon the superiors, their caste superiors, which is a complete, so it is also a festival of reversal. And it is a cultural form which does not openly contest caste, but in its very structure, in its very ideology, it really repudiates, it subverts the notion of caste hierarchy. Oh God, I'm sorry. Devi Ambav and Kaluki, these are some of the khels, Badliya Hindwa, Badmash Ladka, and Keturi. So these are some of the khels that you see. This is Badliya Hindwa, this is the big banyan tree, which is brought from the seventh world below ground and placed on earth. This is a Khelia you see in Bhav. Even audience members will come into Bhav. This is the Khel of Devi, Ambav and Raja Jail. The Devis become conjures. They impersonate conjures in order to befool the king. This is the king, Raja Jail. This is also interesting. This is children in Gavri. You know, there have never been any teaching, no practice, no actual, classes or rehearsals. But you have children who take part in the Gavri, and this is how they learn. Again, children in the Khel of Helia. And these are Meenas. It's interesting how the Bhils always think and talk of the Meenas as being violent and they're a criminal tribe, whereas we are not. They're actually the same caste, only some part of them. But this sort of khel continues. It's a very popular khel. This is the acrobatics in one of them. This is Badshah Ki Fauj. Again, you'll always find Badshah, the king or the foreigner, depicted with haldi on the face, and the uniform, maybe a Stetson hat, a big stomach to show how corrupt, how they've made money. Just the props are also very minimalistic. Meenas again on the rampage. This is Lalu Lohar ka khel. Lalu Lohar is perennially drunk, and he loses the anvil. He's been asked to make the jewelry for the Devis, and the jewelry for the Devis are all lohe ka chimta, and all of these absolutely Bhil. It's not jewelry, but it's what a Devi would, her appurtenances. It's again an interesting khel where he and his wife are dancing and frolicking. Narsingh Ji, again, here you can see that the Devi is swallowing live coal. And this happens almost every day in every Gavri. And this is symbolic of her actually swallowing the evil that is around, that she swallows it to save us all from the sufferings that we otherwise would have. So I would again like to say there's no systematic training, and there are no stages, no props. It's on the same level as the ground. No green room, no audience, no sound, no advertisements, and yet you'll find thousands of people there. So it's also very stylized movements, and the roots are, again, there they are not linear, they're not circular. I call it pseudo-directional because nobody really knows which direction they'll be performing in that the next day. The body of the Khelias takes center stage, and I'm so sorry, I don't know why, I don't think it needs work, but I've seen these slides with this. And music also is interesting because, you know, the poorest house will have a metal thali. And the metal thali with a stick is used, and of course the madal, the drum. And when today even a school will have will have some kind of modern musical accompaniment. So this is something, I think it's kind of resolutely kept this way because this is almost a kind of statement on how they would want their service to proceed. So it is, I've gone through that. The boundaries are also, there are no boundaries, and there is a 360-degree kind of arena that the Khelias perform because the audience sits all around them. This is a, sorry? You can't see this. I'm sorry, yes, I think this is yeah, it's very badly pixelated. This is the route map of a typical Gavri. I just wanted to show that during the 40 days, typically they would travel these villages. The furthest village is right on top. It's about 45 kilometers away from their home village, and there they would use some motorized transport. But otherwise, they typically would walk. So this is the laughter of the collective, and I would say it's a marketplace expression where hierarchies are broken down, and there is a kind of laughter of the collective. You know, there's not any particular laughter. It's a non-malicious laughter. You'll laugh at the god, and you laugh at the, you know, you make parodies of people in power, and this is acceptable. And this is also very interesting, you know, here, this is a wolf looking at a woman's breast. Now that is not a real woman, it's a Khelia who's come to sit with other women just to sort of scandalize the fact that, you know, you're seeing this kind of a scene which you would not normally. And this is the kind of communal catharsis. You see all these women here with their hands held up. This is when they come into a kind of bhav. They come into, yes, this is a trance. They actually go into a frenzy of this kind of communal catharsis. And you'll see it in men, you'll see it in women. And here you see it even among one of the Khelias, the Khelia being the Devi, actually. And then so strong, often violent is this kind of trance that it often takes several minutes to subside, and then the music and the rhythm again picks up, and then they do the gai, which is the circular dance. I would say that, as I said, Bhil, men go dancing where women have been married, and so the Bhils have emerged as the socially acknowledged custodians of the welfare of the upper castes. So upper castes now want this ritual undertaken, which only the Bhils, so they're indebted to, they're obligated to the Bhils for doing this ritual which they feel is required for the betterment of their entire Samaj. So this is a kind of, you know, in a sense, power without hegemony that is exercised here in a completely non-political way. So this is also the disruptive power of the Khel and the ideology of barabari, of equality, because then you actually have upper castes that touch the feet and seek blessings of the Bhils. And there is this temporal acceptance. So I would say cultural hegemony without dominance. This is a phrase used by Ranjit Guha. I've overturned it and called it cultural hegemony. And so the upper classes are subservient and they accept the dominance of the Bhils. So the last slide is, will the Gavri stay? You know, 40 days, when most of them are laborers, wage laborers, they're working in Surat, Ahmedabad, they all come back for the holiday, for the Gavri, take leave or not, resign their jobs or not, and come back to dance when they village dances. Well, the Bhil Panchayat has been consistently banning it. It has been issuing because they feel that if the upper caste want it, well, why don't they dance? Why should we starve for 40 days? And we are the poorest community in society. This is the one season where you get greens that grow in the monsoon free, where we tend the garden and we are not allowed to eat them. And so they feel there's, some of that within the community there are these self-respect analysts who say that this is completely exploitative, that the Bhils are bearing the burden of this on behalf of the entire society. It's not fair. I asked this question to some of my Bhil interlocutors, and after a while they were quiet, and then they looked at me and, with actually incredulous eyes, as if I could still, after so many years and after so much work, ask them this question. So I said, why do you do it? And they couldn't believe it, and they said, because she's us. So that's how I think I would end. Thank you.
Thank you. At work, I have a colleague who's a human rights lawyer, but he's also one of the most well-known drag artists of India. And I would think that, this is drag. This is the original drag. But there was only one question that I have before having lived as a woman, imbibed the feminine so much. And Bhils are a very patriarchal society. Any other way. Patriarchy never goes away, however, wherever you are. So do these men become changed a bit? Do they become?
I think Enakshi's put her sort of finger on it, and I think Bhils are Bhil women are among the most sexually liberated amongst all women in our society, and I don't mean that. I would say they're liberated. I would not say they're promiscuous or something, but they will not stand for, wife beating or iniquitous conduct. They will actually then walk out. And I think there is that measure of equality which other castes look and admire in Bhil society. So yes, while property and all of these things stand, you're completely right. Bhil society still has, and the Bhil Panchayat and the Chokla has a stranglehold on their society, and their common law does not give women, power to sell property and so on. But actually, if you look at inter-se relations within the family, there is a substantial level of equality.
Big round of applause for my teachers. Super. You can meet the speakers, take it. Sit.
Finally, that was really, really interesting. I have a question about phones. Doctor, phones. And
has, over time with homogenization of entertainment, digital, there's so much of Bollywood influence in, I come from Hyderabad, and there's a lot of phone usage in otherwise traditional forums like this. And has that changed some of the, the vibe of this very analog sounding custom?
Yeah, so, thank you. Actually, certainly, you have a lot of, non-professional photographers and videographers using their mobile phones and recording the khels. That certainly has happened. But, this is a oral tradition. I have done the kind of, exercise. I've done the text writing exercise, the mnemonic exercise, but it is a completely oral tradition which varies across village to village. And I don't see that interfering because people know it kanthast. They know it by memory. So to that extent, the phone doesn't really change, but it's changed their lives. I have a chapter, Love in the Time of Gavri, about the missed call marriage and the missed call relationship and so on, and how assignations are made, meetings are organized through the sort of non-communicative aspect of a phone. But yeah.
I want to ask something about, you talked about like the first part.
You mentioned that the first part of the Gavri is like the creation myth, like the origin, and also that it's like it's a way of kind of maybe communicating tribal memory. So, and that's something that I remember hearing about on, like, say, Australian Aborigines, where they also have their own creation myth, which actually mimics geographical history of the earth. So I was wondering, do you see that? Like, it's a way of the community to kind of transmit their history?
Yes, definitely. This creation myth happens only once in the 40 days, and it happens on the last night when actually they enact over the entire night their creation story, and they do it. They talk about how there was nothing but smoke, and then how Parvati, the female deity Shakti was born, and then how it all happens according to them. And this is how it is passed on, because you have the entire community and those dancers who actually sing, who actually know what is being sung. And then you have, the philosophy that everything Shiv creates has in it the seeds of its own destruction. And that is something that repeatedly comes out. So it is actually something that makes you pause and think. And if you look at them, because they are all unlettered, maybe it took 30 years to write and think about it, so by now the next generation would have acquired literacy, but it's a substantially unlettered part of the population that are repositories of this kind of huge civilizational richness.
Just one last one, very quickly.
Very quick question. What really caught my attention was one small thing that you said, that the khels include parodies of those in power. To what level of those in power do these parodies target? And is it really true in today's environment?
It's a very good question, Kishore. The parodies are certainly those who are the Thakur. I mean, I was at a khel when during the Mehrani ka khel, the Mehrani said, "Oh, I have to go to the Thakur's house every night. He's such a pain." And he's sitting there, and he's also having to laugh and pretend that it's a joke. So in a small, closed society, this is very dangerous ground, because after the Gavri, after the carnival, you come back to reality. But obviously there is a holding environment, there is a structure that allows this kind of almost, of course, out of the box, but also that which is absolutely not permissible. And risky. Yeah.
So.
Thank you once again for the speaker. One round of applause, please. Thank you.